Hello, and welcome to Ex-Cult Ed, the podcast where I share my experiences, thoughts, and feelings after leaving the truth, otherwise known as the 2x2 way, the fellowship, the one true way. You get the picture. Now it's time to share my truth, in the hopes that it will be cathartic for me, and perhaps make you, dear listener, feel less alone if you've been through or are going through something similar. This is my story. Hi again. I've taken a break for some months now because my mental health was really struggling. I'm sure the last couple of episodes showed that a little bit. But just listening to them and seeing where I am now, I feel like I've come a long way. And I wanted to put out an episode to talk about where I'm at now. I don't know how many of you relate to this, but the journey of leaving is like a roller coaster. We experience highs of feeling free and able to do anything, and then lows of feeling alone and helpless. At the time I recorded the last episode, I was at a very deep low. I recognized this in myself, and I knew I had to take a step back. But I have to say thank you to everyone who's sent me emails in the meantime. It's been so lovely to hear from you. So in the time between now and the last episode, so about 5 or 6 months, I've completed a course in community services, and I've also been working 2 to 3 jobs at a time and volunteering once a week, as well as trying to sort out my life and relationships. But I'm slowly getting there and starting to cut down on things that aren't bringing me joy. I guess you could say I've been Marie Kondoing my life a little bit and learning to say no, as well as surrounding myself more with people who bring out the best in me, and hopefully I bring out the best in them. I know I still have my up and down days, but I think that doing the study has been a big help, as well as trying to move forward with my own life and starting to work in an industry that I actually care about. I've also been in touch with some families who are still in the cult and have really enjoyed my catch-ups and conversations with them, and have actually been able to find a lot of common ground without disrespecting each other's beliefs. In fact, one of the families told me on the second time we caught up that they'd been listening to my podcast. And I was thinking, oh no, they're going to think I'm awful and they're never going to want to see me again. But instead, they were able to talk about some of the things I'd said and laugh about some of the observations I'd made, which was really lovely and open-minded of them. And for that particular family, I have to say, I have a deep respect for their faith and their individual spirituality, because I believe that their relationship with God transcends the regulations and the brainwashing of the cult. So anyway, I want to share my experience of going back to a mission for the first time in 6 years, which felt so strange to me. I had my professing cousins come and visit me from the other side of Australia, and I've only seen them twice in the last 6 years, but that is twice more than any of my other family still in the cult, and it was so lovely to see them. They didn't put any pressure on me, and I respected their beliefs, so we got along fine. It was actually great. So on Sunday, they said they wanted to go to a mission, which was an hour and a half away, and they suggested they take me and drop me at some shops nearby. But I said, I can just join you, and they said that would be lovely. So off I went to a mission for the first time in about 6 years. It felt so strange just dressing up for a mission again. This time, like never before, I wore makeup and I wore a new skirt that I'd bought at an op shop, which was way too short for a mission, and we piled in the car to go. It was an hour and a half drive to get to this mission, and I joked with them about how we were spending more time in the car than at the actual mission. On the way, part of me felt really trapped and wondered why I had agreed to go to this thing. I had a short moment of panic, but then I breezed through it. I had to borrow a hymn book from my cousin as well. Now, I know I grew up in this cult and have been to more meetings than a rabbit has babies in its lifetime, but going to this one, I felt like a completely new outsider again. I'd forgotten the sequence of events, singing the hymns felt so foreign to me, and the prayers and sermons just put me to sleep. I actually tried really hard to listen because I wanted to see what I thought of it, but my brain wouldn't even focus because I was so weirded out seeing all these super young people coming in dressed so plainly and married to each other so early in life. Just seeing in everyone else how restricted and confined I used to be, and not even recognizing that in myself now. I was there wearing a skirt I'd never have worn at all, let alone to a meeting, and not even self-conscious about it. I was there being unapologetically me for the first time, and I felt so out of place. During the opening prayer, one of the preachers started talking about how sinful we are and how nothing of ourselves can make us worth anything to God, and I remember feeling myself getting a bit angry about that and remembering how I used to really believe that. I used to take that to heart and I used to feel so worthless. I think I felt myself really closed off to the things that the preachers were saying now. During the sermons, I looked around to see what other people were doing, and I saw some people taking notes and wondered, what on earth could they be noting? The workers are saying things that we all already knew. And how could I have gone to these missions twice a week for years and still been interested in hearing about how sinful I was and how Jesus came to take away my sins over and over and over again? To spend an hour hearing the same messages and singing about how God is good and we are shit. Basically, all the hymn lyrics could have been, we are shit, Jesus is amazing, but we are bad and God loves us, but we are so awful. I was reminded again how there was no way to be proud of ourselves or feel good about ourselves. It was just a constant barrage of we're forever indebted to this higher being that created us and allowed all these things to happen in our lives, but there's nothing that we can do to make ourselves worthy of his love. And I wondered how a God could have created this wonderful planet with all these exciting things and then said, no, you can't do any of it. I had wondered if going back would have made me feel nostalgic in any way, but it didn't at all. In fact, it made me feel so thankful that I'm out. It made me so happy that I don't have to live like that anymore. That my mind and body isn't stuck in that bondage and my self-esteem isn't captive to false teachings and man-made rules. Now, I've moved states in Australia. I've been living on the opposite side of Australia to where I was since 2020. However, it turns out I knew at least 5 people in that mission, although I didn't recognize my own cousins. One of the guys I knew from when I was a teenager gave me a big hug and introduced his wife and said that they could have me for coffee sometime, which was really lovely, and I think I would probably like to. Now, I have cousins still in the cult on the other side of my family, and before the mission started, when we were all sitting there quietly, and I was thinking about how natural it would be for me to pull out my phone and start scrolling while waiting, and then I had to stop myself because the thing to do is sit and stare at the back of the head in front of you. I saw a girl and a guy walk in and thought, that person has a very similar face to my cousin. She reminds me of my cousin a lot. And then I didn't think anything of it. And then another person walked in with a guy and I thought, that's odd. She looks familiar. There must be a family over here with faces like my cousins. It didn't actually cross my mind that they were my cousins until later when I was having dinner with my cousins who I went to the mission with and the head worker who was running that mission. The worker was filling us in on who's who around here and mentioned that both my cousins were there. And I was like, what? No way. I didn't recognize them at all. Anyway, so I spent that evening with my cousins and the head worker over here, who was actually the worker I professed through back over east. He got sent here to replace the head worker for whatever unknown reason. And this preacher is actually nice, but it crossed my mind how little the preachers understand of daily life. And before I get into that, I wanted to share another thought that I had when I was having dinner with them all, and that is how small that world is and how much people talk about each other and know each other's business. And I think that's partly why we had no boundaries, because everybody was always updating each other on what everybody else was doing. So for example, with the head worker here and having dinner with him, he was telling people about who so-and-so is and their story and all the people that my cousins met in the morning meeting and what they're doing. And I was just thinking how, because it's such a small world, people feel like they have the right to know and talk about everything that everyone else is doing, and there's no privacy. And so of course it's very difficult for us when we leave and are out in the world to understand that people don't want to share everything about their lives and they don't want to talk about everything that other people in their lives are going through. I know that this is something that I found really surprising when I started talking to worldly people, and they'd talk about their friends, but they wouldn't tell me a lot about their friends, because I was so used to when you meet people, they'll tell you about their friend and they'll tell you their friend's whole life story. They're married to so-and-so, they grew up here, they did this for a job, and then their partner did this, and this is how they met, and then they had a baby when they were this age, and you basically know someone's whole life story before you meet them. And that's not always the case in the world. Anyway, this worker wanted to see my cousins and had asked to stay 2 nights with them in the resort unit that they'd hired while visiting me. This meant that he was staying with them over the only sunny day we had together, the only day we could have actually gone out and done something. So instead, we spent the whole time just hanging around the unit. The whole family had also moved their sleeping arrangements into one room so the worker could have a room to himself. And I just am not sure if the preachers think about these things when they ask to stay with families, or if they're just so used to families revolving their lives around them that it just isn't really a consideration. Of course, the family loved seeing him because they really like him as a person and as a friend, and I also like him as a person, and I don't have any judgment on him not seeing the way things are because he's lived that his whole life and he's used to that. And I think after a certain amount of years, perhaps the preachers lose touch with what it's like to be a normal person in the cult, let alone a normal person in general. But I just noticed how interesting the dynamics are and how the workers are still so respected and put on a pedestal, but how I now just viewed him as another person and not anything more or less special than anyone else. I even noticed little things that would be very hard for children to understand. For example, the way that they talk and the things that they do when there's not a preacher there, they might be told off for saying and doing the same things when there is a preacher there. And that's really hard for a child to get their head around, that why is this thing okay when this person isn't here, but it's not okay when they are here. It's also so interesting to me that 6 years later, I can go and sit in a mission where I once used to sit feeling alone, miserable, guilty, sinful, worthless, and helpless. And I can now go and feel proud of who I am, thankful that I'm not part of that, and that my mind is free of that, and also know that I am strong enough to exist without it. In fact, I could never go back. I used to worry about how I would ever exist in the world, but now I know I can never ever exist under the control of that cult or any other. I am so much more me, so much more vibrant. I have a whole life and world to experience. I have been thinking about getting back in touch with my spirituality, or just even considering looking into that a little bit. For the past 6 years, I had been extremely closed off to anything to do with God or the Bible or any sort of spirituality, but I'm starting to feel a little more open now, just not to any sort of controlling religion. I'm definitely a lazy Sundays kind of girl now. I'd like to finish this episode sharing a little something that was a huge shock to me recently. I got an email from a family that I used to know very well in the cult and who I never thought would leave. I'll only share a little bit to protect their anonymity, but here is what they had to say. We recently came across your YouTube channel and thought we should contact you. We were moved to tears by your experience with your dad and the assaults by the unnamed boy and his father. We hope you feel free to contact us if you want to. Neither of us are trained counselors, and we must also take responsibility for wearing blinkers for so long. However, we left the meetings this year, so our perspectives, attitudes, and opinions have undergone a fairly radical change this year. We left because of all the sex abuse revelations, but will never go back because of the false doctrines, man-made rules, etc. We agree that it is really a cult. I was so happy to hear from these people, and it gives me a lot of hope that anyone at any age can get out and see the truth in hindsight. I don't hold anything against them because I understand the control and the hold this church had over all of us. In fact, I don't hold anything against anyone who has cut me out all these years. And I do hope that anyone who leaves doesn't feel any shame or judgment from those of us who have left before them. I hope that we who are now out can be very kind and understanding with those who are recently leaving, those who are questioning, and even those who are still inside it. You just never know who your little worldly light might be helping. And if anyone is still inside the cult or the religion or the truth as you might call it, please know that I have no judgment if you'd like to chat about how you're feeling. I've been there. A lot of us have been there. In fact, most of us who left were questioning and feeling strange and uncomfortable and miserable for years before we did something about it. But know that it is possible, and the journey out won't be easy. At some points, you might even feel worse than you felt when you were in it, because change is hard. Getting out of your comfort zone is hard. Finding your own way, making new friends and family is so daunting. And facing that loneliness of not having a constant God watching over you and that community that was both your comfort and your control is extremely scary. But if little old me can do it, so can you. And if you're listening to these episodes and choosing to stay inside, know that I understand that choice, and I also respect you and would love to hear from you if there's anything you'd like to say as well. There have been times during the 6 years that I've been out where I've considered going back, just because part of me thought, I know this, it would be easy. One thing I've found very difficult in the world is not knowing people when I meet them. I don't know what their morals are, I don't know what they stand for, and I did long for a while for the comfort of being able to meet people and know exactly who they are and what they stand for. But something I've found is that getting to know different people in the world and associating with people who stand for different things than you, it helps you really understand and clarify your own positions. It helps you confront things, values, beliefs, and stereotypes that you have that aren't necessarily correct. And it means that instead of having this strict and rigid, restrictive, judgmental set of beliefs, your beliefs are changing. They improve you as a person, they improve your understanding of other people around you, and they really help you improve your relationships with those close to you. So you can grow as an individual and you can grow together with the people that you care about. Anyway, that's all from me. I hope to be making some more episodes soon. And if anyone's still listening, I would love to hear from you. Bye! Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate you. If you'd like to reach out, ask any questions, share your story, say whatever you need to say, email me at exculted@gmail.com. That's exculted@gmail.com. This episode is edited by Little Old Me. The music is created by Soul Prod Music. Always remember, you can walk your own way, speak your own truth, and live your own life. Bye!